meeting of the LCOG and MPC to order. And the first thing on our agenda would be to approve our October 5th minutes. And if I can get a motion to approve those minutes, I'm sure you've had time to read them.
Chair Level?
Yes, Chair Farr.
I move to approve the October 5th minutes.
Thank you.
And I'm happy to second that.
All right, we've got a motion approved in a second. We'll go for the vote. All those in favor, wave your hand or say aye.
Right.
Looks like we've got a passed unanimously. Thank you. Let's move on to item 4, adjustments to the agenda. Any announcements from the members here or any adjustments to the agenda as we see it coming up?
Mayor Venus, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I don't have an adjustment to the agenda, but I do have an announcement if I can. I just wanted to share the good news that that the City of Eugene and LTD went together as partners for a grant for Safe Streets and Roads for All, and we received that grant.
Yay.
And that is a really wonderful, it's a planning grant, it's a citywide grant to improve roadway safety and crossing safety, particularly around bus stops. So we're very excited with that partnership with LTD and very excited to have received that grant.
Super positive announcement. Thank you, Mayor Venus, for that. That's awesome. Great. Anybody else? All right, I'll take that awkward pause as a no. Any comments from the audience? Or do we have any people online that would want to raise their virtual hand and make any comments or testimony going forward in this meeting?
Sure, I don't see anybody in the meeting other than members, staff, and invited guests.
Okay, all right, we'll move through that. Thank you very much, Paul. All right, for our first item is item 6A on the Metropolitan Planning Organizational Issues, the Central Lane MPO Quadrennial Certification Report. This is not an action item, it's for information and discussion only. And Paul, I think that's yours.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Commissioner. So I'm going to do a very quick introduction here, and then I'd like to introduce our two guests who will be taking over the bulk of this agenda item. As it says, this agenda item is about the Central Lane NPO Quadrennial Certification Report. And what that means is that under federal regulations, NPOs that are in the larger category, they're known as Transportation Management Areas, or TMAs, are required to undergo a certification review every 4 years. That's the quadrennial aspect of this. And the certification review essentially is to ensure that not only is the NPO following all of the regulations and requirements from USDOT, but is also fulfilling the work of the NPO and completing its duties. So we underwent this quadrennial certification review back in June with a series of meetings over 3 days. And really we started earlier than that with discussions and some information exchanges. But back in June, we met over 3 days with staff from both Federal Highways Administration and Federal Transit Administration, as well as the Oregon Department of Transportation. Those meetings and discussions resulted in a draft report that I believe was sent to me in August. I actually shared that draft report with all of you, and we put it out for any comments or input to staff as well. There was really only a couple of comments that we submitted on the draft, mainly around some deadlines and just some minor details. And then just recently, within the past couple of weeks, we received the final report, which is what is in your packet today. And we'd like you to hear about how the NPO has performed under this review and what it means going forward. So today we have with us two guests, both of whom I'm very fortunate and happy to say we have worked with for quite a long time, a number of years. We have Ned Conroy from Federal Transit Administration and Jasmine Harris from Federal Highways Administration. And with that, Ned and Jasmine, if you two would like to take over and present the certification report and its findings to the policy board, I'd appreciate it.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to start things off. This is Ned from FTA out of Region 10, and Jasmine will come in a little bit later after I get things started. As Paul mentioned, we do this every 4 years, and our previous report was done in 2019 review, and our focus of this report was essentially looking back over that that report done 4 years ago and seeing how well our previous recommendations and corrective actions had been addressed. What I should say just right up front, very positive report. All of the corrective actions that we had were addressed in some way from our previous report, some fully addressed and others partially. I'll get into some of that detail. One thing I should say about the terminology, I use the word corrective actions. That's just our federal way of saying it's a it's a finding that more work needs to be done to more fully meet federal requirements. We also use other terms like recommendations. We have some of those too in the report. Those are not what we would call compliance issues. Those are areas where we just think improvements could be made, and it might not be associated with our federal requirements, but we just like to throw out areas where we see where improvements could be made. And then the final term we use in the report is commendations, and those are just areas we think that exceptional work is being done. So I'm going to focus on the corrective actions from our previous report and how they were addressed and what we came up with for our new findings this time. Real quickly, as I mentioned, very positive. We had 12 corrective actions in 2019. All of them were addressed. 9 were fully resolved, and that was excellent. And 3 we thought were partially resolved, so we had some suggestions for continued work there. One thing I should say right regarding these corrective actions, there were the most that were included were on the primary documents, the MTP and the TIP. These are the meat and potatoes of the MPO. And from our last review, there was actually 7 corrective actions related to those 2 documents. And I'd like to say that all of those 7 corrective actions were fully addressed over the past 4 years. And it wasn't an easy past 4 years, as we all know. A lot of challenges during that period. So we really commend the MPO for not only taking those corrective actions seriously and addressing them, but working with us, because we met with Paul and his staff on numerous occasions to try to clarify what we would like to be done, and they were very responsive in that way. So those 2 particular documents, we really felt enormous progress was made, the MTP and the TIP. And in particular, we actually had a commendation on the MTP. We just thought the way it was presented, written, formatted, made it very easy to understand, a very significant amount of information, a lot of it technical, but done in a way that the public and other policymakers could understand. So we really thought that 2045 MTP was well done. The other 2 areas that we had some corrective actions were public participation and the CMP. Public participation was interesting because we acknowledged excellent work that was being done, especially over, like I mentioned, the period of the pandemic, where the MPO had to do a significant amount of work to change up how their public participation worked, and we thought they did a great job in doing that. We actually gave them a commendation on public participation and how they modified their outreach to better reach a diverse population. The area that we found needed work, though, was just the public participation plan itself. It really just needs to be updated to reflect the new processes and the good work that's actually being done. So it's really just a documentation issue there. We also did find some need to clarify how the MPO works with federal land management agencies, and we know that's already underway. The other area that we had some partially addressed corrective actions was regarding the CMP. We had 3 corrective actions from our previous report. We felt a couple of those were fully addressed, but we felt there was one that was not fully. And it's really just regarding kind of putting the bow on the CMP, which is a difficult process to, when I say CMP, congestion management process, that we identified the need for an implementation schedule and then a periodic ongoing assessment of that process to make sure it's actually working. So they're really just kind of fine points that needed to be more fully addressed. So all in all, as I mentioned, excellent review. The 2024 tally for the report now comes up with 2 corrective actions, one regarding the CMP and one regarding the public participation plan. We had additional 7 recommendations. I won't get into those. They're just regarding areas that we felt additional work could be done to improve already well-done processes. And then, as I mentioned, we had 2 commendations. I'll let Jasmine come on in and if she has any comments, but what I would like to say is I really appreciate all the time and effort Paul and his staff, in addition to ODOT staff who worked with us, as well as LTD staff. It really helped make the review go smoothly. Jasmine, do you have any comments?
Yes. Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Jasmine Harris with Federal Highways, and maybe just a few things that I wanted to touch on that Ned didn't fully cover are the 2 commendations, because I think those are really important. The MTP, yes, Paul, that is what Central Lane calls a regional transportation plan. We refer to it as an MTP as it's described in the requirements. But it's very public friendly, and I can't think of any MPOs that have an MTP so that it's so public friendly, and that's what we look for, because all of our required documents are meant to be shared with the public and for the transportation planning process to be transparent. That's number 1. The other one is the Lane Youth Transportation Advisory Council. And just all that outreach that's being done specifically with the youth and the marginalized groups. So we really wanted to make sure that we captured that as a commendation. In terms of opportunities on moving forward, like Ned mentioned, it was a very positive review. Central Lane has an amazing staff. Paul is just so very well aware of requirements, and he's very easy to work with. So this is an awesome NPO that does good work. Some of the opportunities I just wanted to mention is, of course, closing out the corrective actions. There are very few compared to the last one. The other one is, although recommendations are not corrective actions, we do want to encourage the NPO, as they're able and as staff and time is available, to look into those recommendations, because sometimes they can be borderline compliance actions, and our job is to make sure that Central Lane NPO is aware of the requirements to kind of get them on track. And then the other thing is that I wanted to mention is the one corrective action regarding the federal land management consultation process. That was identified as a corrective action, but I want to be transparent that a lot of MPOs and state DOTs have not fully implemented this corrective action. So it's just want to show that the corrective actions that we did identify, they weren't huge, probably minus the CMP, but that's a complicated one. And I guess just to close things up, the Central Lane NPO is now certified for 4 years, and with very few corrective actions, and it was a positive review, like Ned mentioned. And that's all I have.
We can take any
Good.
questions.
Ned, do you have any other things you want to add?
No, I'm just saying we can take any questions if you have any, or any comments.
Any questions out there? Bueller?
Commissioner, if there's no questions from the members, I'd like to make just 1 or 2 additional comments if I could.
Please do. Yeah, please do.
So I really, again, want to appreciate not just the work of Ned and Jasmine, but the rest of the US DOT and ODOT team on the review. And I also really want to thank the LCOG and the regional staff, because none of this happens without not only the LCOG staff, but all of your staff that are members of the Regional Staff Advisory Committee that work on all these products also. To the two corrective actions, I just want to reassure you that we're already working very much on them. The first corrective action is to update the public participation plan, which was last updated in 2015. And we are well into that process. We are probably a year or so into updating the public participation plan. In fact, right now we have a significant public survey that is, as I speak today or this week, out for translation into Spanish. And as soon as that's done, it's going to go out to the public and get heavily advertised in both languages to get input on the update of the public participation plan. And we actually are anticipating, unless something changes, bringing the first look at what we're doing on that work to you at next month's policy board meeting. The second corrective action, as was mentioned, is the update of the congestion management process or congestion management plan. That is a more technical exercise. That is one that initially in the draft certification report in August was identified with a deadline to address the corrective action or have that updated by sometime in 2025. One of the comments that I sent back on the draft was to please push that deadline back to January 2026, which is the deadline for the next update of our regional transportation plan, or the big RTP. I wanted to link those two because they should be connected, and that is going to allow us to fold those into one work program. So you'll be seeing and hearing more about that soon also. That's all.
Very good. Very good. Paul, you neglected to give kudos to another person, and that's yourself, sir. We appreciate you and all you do as well. So, hey, and just to Ned and to Jasmine, just from, we're in baseball season and all that, and we got 9 out of 12 correct actions done. I think we're batting about 750. We'd be making what, $30 million a year if we were playing baseball, right?
About that, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
a good average.
That's a good average. We'll take that any day. All right, there's no further questions. Let's move on down to item 6B.
Just a quick comment, Chair.
Yes.
Baseball season ended yesterday.
They
Rangers
won,
are
didn't they?
the World Series champs. Which is sad for an Orioles fan.
Oh, that's too funny. Awesome. Thank you for that correction there, Chair Farr. I love it. All right, so the next thing we have on here, we got a little bit of a boundary adjustment to put us more in line with the census, and that's the draft MPO item 6B boundary adjustment. And Paul, you're the presenter on that, so take it away when you're ready.
I am, Commissioner, and I'm happy to do so. I do want to note that Councilor Moe has joined us and he does have his hand raised.
Oh.
I have this meeting on my schedule for 11:45. I'm terribly sorry for everybody. Commissioner Lovell is doing a great job leading the meeting, so if he wants to go ahead, that's just fine with me.
Sure, why not?
Okay.
I'll jump into the deep end of the pool. That sounds good. Thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate that. So, Paul, go ahead. Item 6B, yours.
Okay, thank you. So this is another thing that happens only periodically, and instead of every 4 years, this happens essentially every 10 years. After each U.S. Census, MPOs are required to essentially review and, if necessary, adjust their MPO boundary. And I'm going to sort of simplify things greatly here, but what happens is that the U.S. Census Bureau, once it has all of the information from, in this case, the 2020 census, looks at a number of criteria, population, density, what we sort of call the leaps and bounds. In other words, how close certain populations are to others within a metropolitan area or on the fringe of a metropolitan area. And the U.S. Census Bureau makes a determination on what's called, again, simplifying things here, essentially ends up being called the urbanized area, or the UZA. The census-defined UZA, or urbanized area, is the minimum size that an MPO can be. The MPO has the discretion to determine or propose its boundary be larger than that, and actually there's an upper bound, which is the extent of the metropolitan statistical area. In our case, that would encompass all of Lane County. We're not going to go there. The MPO will never be that big, but we have the discretion to make a larger MPO boundary, and for a number of reasons that often makes sense, because you want to bring in certain areas. For instance, in Oregon, where we have a 20-year land use planning process, you want to bring in those areas that are already identified in Oregon as likely to urbanize over the 20 years. So if you look, I'm going to, again, just be very brief about this. If you look at the first map in your packet, it shows both the current MPO boundary and the proposed MPO boundary. And you're going to be looking at that map very hard pressed to see where there's any difference, because there are only two small differences that we're proposing. And if you look at the next page, there's two instances there where the Census Bureau, in its determination of the minimum size of the urbanized area, determined that there's a little bit of land just southwest of Goshen and a little bit of land just southeast of Walterville on the eastern edge of Springfield that should be within the defined urban area. The process here is that we need to bring this to you as a preliminary look at it. I'm asking for a public hearing today. This will be out for public comment for 30 days. In December, we will bring to you an action item to recommend this new boundary for the MPO. That then goes to the governor. The governor actually is the one that approves the boundaries of MPOs in each state. So again, today I'm asking for your for you to hold a public hearing on this, and then if you have any questions or discussion or feedback.
So then, Paul, the process of holding a public hearing, in the schedule, it says that was today. Is that something that we're doing on another date or continuing for a certain period of time?
No, the public hearing would be today only, and the public comment period, which opened last Friday when the packet was published, will continue for 30 days.
Okay. So the action they're requesting today is to hold this public hearing, and then what's our direction to staff? If we have no other comment, then to direct them to go ahead and adopt these two changes?
If you have no other comments, it would just be bring it back to you in next month for adoption. Yes.
Okay. Any comments from the panel of board? I see Pat Farr, Commissioner Farr's hands up.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. And Paul, a quick question for you regarding the process on the public. So today is the public hearing. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
And how has this been noticed? Just out of curiosity, for the public to be able to come and make comment, should they need to make comment?
The standard notice process is that there is an interested parties distribution list that receives all of these agendas for your meetings, as well as every month when the MPC meeting is noticed out to the media, we notice action items or hearings. So it was included in the media notice. If you are interested in a second public hearing next month, we can always schedule a second public hearing. If you feel that the additional notice is necessary, that's up to you.
Oh, by no means, Paul. I just wanted to see what the process of each body has a different process, and the process that you've described seems quite adequate in terms of getting it to the people who would be most interested in providing public comment. So I have no further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair Moe, you have your hand up, it looks like.
There's a lot of talk about the Goshen area and future expansion into that area. And will this help planning that future? I guess that's all I need. Is it adequate enough?
Chair, what I can say is that really what this does is, if you look at the inset, that additional darker green area that's being proposed to be added, all that really means is that any transportation facilities within that area would now be eligible for the MPO's federal funding. That's really to sort of boil it down, the significance of the boundary is that it's the area that you as the MPO are planning for, and it's the area that is eligible to receive the federal funds that flow through the MPO.
Thank you.
So it looks to me like, Paul, if there's no other discussions or concerns, we can make a motion to have that adopted as requested on the agenda? No?
Well, Commissioner, actually what I would ask is that you, and I'll admit very quickly, and but just for formalities, open a public hearing and then close it.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Metropolitan Policy Committee would like to open a public hearing on the additions of Southwest Goshen and the Southwest Walterville properties. So I will now say that the public hearing is open for any comment or discussion.
And Commissioner, I'll report that again, there's nobody present in the meeting other than members and staff.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, so if there's no other comments or questions, I'd also like to close the public hearing concerning the additions of Southwest Goshen properties in Southwest Walterville.
Thank you, Commissioner. And then no further action is needed today unless there's any other specific direction to staff.
Okay, fair enough. If there's no other, Mr.
A question, Chair.
Yes.
And I just want to make certain that that we are conducting the public. I see that there are 2 attendees online, Aaron Staniak and Catherine Rohan, presuming they are not interested in public comment.
Commissioner Farr, they are both staff, and as far as, and I'm not seeing their hands being raised in the meeting.
We love it when government works well. We're doing good, peeps. All right, looks good. We're on item 6.3 in the agenda. ODOT update. This looks like Mr. Vidal Francis's corner of the room. Is that correct there, Mr. Vidal?
That is correct, Commissioner Lovell.
You go right ahead, sir.
All right, and I won't stay too long. Thank you all for having me today. Just a couple of quick updates. First and foremost, talk a little bit about our level of reduction of service in terms of ODOT. As many of you are aware, we are having our own little financial issues that we have to deal with, in particular around maintenance funding activities and so forth. And what I will do is I'll drop in the chat a link plus a brochure, if you will, that we kind of made to show where the level of services will be dropped throughout Region 2. I will say that in terms of less service, the metropolitan area, to be honest with you, is likely not to be affected as much, simply because most of our main arteries come through there, and consequently, if there is some sort of level of service that would be diminished, it would actually happen at the smaller arteries. But I would like to drop that brochure in there, and if Paul, if you don't mind, please, if you can distribute that to everyone here. And when we're talking about level of service being reduced, we're talking about if we came through snow plowing maybe 4 times a day, it'd probably be about 3 times a day. And again, it's going to be priority based throughout the region, trying to anticipate how things could be impacting us. And I will say it's not just snow plowing, it'll also be things like, if you're familiar with camp cleanups. I mean, we literally spend about a bit north of 200,000 a year in just camp cleanups. We do a lot of material patching, if you will, through our roadways, and that's about 800,000, if you will, each year. And there's going to be a reduction there. And that reduction is not just simply because we don't have enough funds coming through. That's because the cost of materials, the cost of doing business, if you will, has increased. But again, we're going to be strategic about it. But I will say, too, the metropolitan area will not see such a huge impact simply because of the nature of the terrain there, if you will. On another note, I would like to just briefly talk about the 2730 STIP. Our last Lane Act meeting, Bill Johnston and I gave a presentation. We had to go fairly quick on that presentation simply because of the constraint of time to talk about the 2730 STIP. That conversation has already started, where since May, and it's going to carry on through November, the OTC, Oregon Transportation Commission, plans to meet in November to make some final adjustments or tweaks to, if you will, to some of the decisions concerning that 2730 STIP. And I will say, and if I can get to the gist of it, in the past, the OTC has relied on input from advisory groups, committees, if you will, and the public to inform their decisions. But for this STIP, because there are so little discretionary funds to allocate, the OTC has simply decided to figure out how best on their own, if you will, with recommendations from ODOT on how best to allocate that funds. And I'm going to go, and in a nutshell, if I can say this, basically the residual or the discretionary funds is down to the last number I heard was $70 million. And again, that small pot of money, really, when you're looking at things from a statewide basis, the impact right there is very small, and consequently trying to figure out how the best way to separate, divide, most people like to say spread the peanut butter much thinner, if you will. That's the challenge that they're faced with. And so in this November meeting that the OTC will be meeting, they're going to be finalizing discussions on how they plan to distribute or use that funding. I will like to also say, some of you probably already know as well, that there is a new Region 2 manager for Region 2. This is a very critical position for Region 2 that impacts our area, and that's Savannah Crawford. Some of you may have worked with her, may have met with her. She's been selected as a Region 2 manager, and we do expect to see some of her leadership just shine through, simply because of this area she's very familiar with. And she has, her last position was an area manager for the Corvallis area, so she's familiar with that area as well. And I expect for her participation, her involvement, at least in this area, to be a little bit more. And the last thing I'd like to do is just give a shout out to the City of Eugene for helping out Rob Interfell, his group, as well as Sarah Mazie, who is the Safe Routes to School coordinator for the 4J school. Back in September, the OTC did come down to Eugene to have their meetings and so forth. But one of the things that we did coordinate with Rob, as well as with Sarah Mazie, was a bike tour, if you will. And the City of Eugene has some very great facilities, such that the commissioners were able to, through the course of a 3, maybe 4 mile track, if you will, traverse a separated facility, a track facility, a multi-use facility, all on bicycle, just so they can get that experience on how it feels to be coming through town, making the tour, if you will. And consequently, I've had a lot of excellent feedback, and they wanted to at least express their thanks for the good facilities there in Eugene. And that's all that I have for today, and happy to take any questions or thoughts.
Chair Farr, you have a question?
Actually, it's not a question, it's a commendation. And Vidal, I want to thank you publicly in front of everybody here for the marvelous presentation you made to the Board of County Commissioners a week ago Tuesday. You came in person, gave a great presentation, answered questions, and demonstrated how responsive you are, not just to the long-term needs that ODOT is addressing, but the short-term and emerging needs. Well done, and I really appreciated being there that day. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farr.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I'll second that comment as well, Vidal. You guys did a great job. And it was great finally to see you face to face. All I've seen you in this little Hollywood Square thing, so it was really good to see you. All right, if there's any more comments or questions? Now, the item number 3, the next step agenda build, is that something that Vidal already covered, or is that something that we need to cover as well? I'm a little lost on that one.
No, Commissioner. All I will note under next steps agenda build is at the bottom of your agenda page, notice that we're already calling the January 4th meeting canceled. We just felt that given that falls in New Year's Day so closely, it's during the same week, it's before schools are back in session, etc., that it probably was wisest to cancel that meeting. But we will meet next on December 7th.
At 11:30, same bat time, same bat channel?
Yes.
All right, sounds good. If there's any other comments or questions we have from any of the panels that we need to have before we adjourn? I'll take that as a no. So all of you, thank you for your time and attention, and just a word of encouragement today, go out and be the brilliant leaders that I know you all are. So I appreciate your time and effort. Thank you very much. This is adjourned.
Au revoir.
Thank you all.